When we meet our kids where they are at, we're able to guide them and walk with them and lead them to where they need to be. Rather than we parents coming in saying, I want them to be this way, I want them to get here. No, it is a child that will guide me and will lead me to where they want to go, but I have to meet them where they're at.
You've probably heard the stories of foster children, what they go through, and and kids bouncing from home to home, how hard that is, and parenting them can be a challenge as well. Well, our guest today is a former street kid, Peter Mutabazi. He knows what it feels like to grow up in a world where love, caring, and kindness are nowhere to be found. And as the adoptive father of 3 and a foster dad to more than 40 children. I love that. That is awesome. He's also knows what difference it makes to a child to experience the positive influence of an attentive, loving parent. And I love this part, Peter. You apparently really involved in organizations that, in a way, you can sort of sponsor or adopt a child, like World
Correct.
Vision and Compassion. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're having a Compassion fundraiser coming up soon.
Yes.
Can't wait for that. As well as the Red Cross. You're a popular speaker and an author, and this is the name of the book, Love Does Not Conquer All, and Other Surprising Lessons I Learned as a Foster Dad to More Than 40 Kids. Peter, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me here. Truly a joy that I get to share a little bit of my journey and my dad life as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we've heard, love conquers all, yet the title of your book, Love Does Not Conquer All, challenges that common romantic notion. Tell us about your life's journey and how it led to the book title.
Right, absolutely. So I grew up, from Uganda, grew up the poor of the poorest, grew up in a home where my mother never told me to dream. It's hard for a mom if she cannot feed you for the night to tell you, hey, you can dream, And, went to fetch water 3 miles away, never had a pair of shoes until when I was 16 years old, never slept on a mattress. So for me, poverty was all I knew, and it was really bad. And then at the age of 4, I began to realize that not only were we poor, but my dad was abusive at the same time. So for me, I had poverty on one side and then abusive on the other side. So for me, if there was one thing I ever wished to be was, I wish I did not have to see tomorrow, because today was hard enough that you're going to repeat it again and again. And at the age of 10, I thought my father would kill me. So I ran away and became a street kid. And that was my life, where I was treated more like a stray animal on the streets of Kampala. And that was my life until I met a stranger who truly, truly changed my life. He didn't see a thief. He didn't see a smelling teenager, but he saw a kid with potential and truly changed my life and took me to school and took me in his home. And I wasn't a good kid at all because I had no boundaries. I had, you're a street kid, there are no boundaries. But somehow he loved me through all that and cared for me. And so for me, when it came, love does not conquer all, it was the best way I can say that despite, yes, they loved me, but they did more than that they had to really endure the pain that I had to bring in their home. The boundaries that I had no clue, but they were willing to stay put and teach me. And that's what I thought. Hey, we can say we love them, but there's much more that we can learn too as we get to be parents.
That is incredible. And as Kate mentioned before, 40 foster and adoptive children, that is just amazing. And I'm sure that before you started this journey, people think about it, they have kind of assumptions of what these kids need, but there's what they really need. And I'm sure that you learned that along the way. Can you talk about maybe a moment where that became really clear to you? I was kind of thinking they were going to need this, but this is what these children really need.
Right, absolutely. Again, I've had 47 children, and most of them have gone back home. That I realized that it's easy to see the parents as villains, but most time they are also looking for someone to come alongside and give them the tools to be the best parents you can be. And that was probably the light switch. Wait a minute, not every parent is evil. Sometimes they just need a few resources, and once they have those, that we get to have their kids back. But also, I got to learn really quickly that the best gift I could ever give to any child in foster care is going back home when that is applicable. And I had no idea. I thought, well, the parents are the worst people, so let's keep their kids and raise them. Little did I realize that, wait a minute, there's a mom on the other side. No mom gives birth to a child so they can go to foster care. Sometimes, they have no resource. There's no one to guide them. There's no one to call. There's no one to really come alongside. And that's when I realized that, wait a minute, I'm not just fostering a child, but I'm fostering the entire family. And that's been really neat to see them go back home.
So you're being a blessing to more than just a child.
That's
I love
cool.
that. Section 1 in your book is called Lessons I Wish I'd Known Before I Became a Dad. Can you share just one or two of those real quick?
Well, absolutely. Everyone tells you to be a foster parent and you sign up and you're like, sure. And then you get to learn along the way. But I wish I had someone who had guided me, and that's why I wrote that chapter, because there are so many people who fantasize about being moms, being dads. And I wanted to journey with them like, by the way, there are things that I wish I knew, that I wish I knew that, hey, I'm going to have my kids, but they might not like me at all, but that was okay. But no one really prepared me for that. That I wanted to write those sections to prepare any mom, any dad, any family member who's trying to take care of the children to remember that, hey, we signed up for this and it's our job to take care of the list of these, but our expectations should be low. I think I came in with high expectation that I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm expecting so much from a child who has absolutely no clue of what I'm expecting them from, or what I'm demanding, or what I'm assuming that they should do. That quickly realized that was my job, to really put my expectation low in order to be there for my kids. And I wanted to prepare other families. Hey, how do we love kids? But also, how would we not really project ourselves to our kids' needs and the problems in a way to be the best parents we can be?
I think that kind of leads into the next question. Your thoughts about this. You said it's a mistake to parent a child for what we wish them to be, rather than who they are. Talk about that.
Right. So I come from Africa. Africa, in some way, education is the only way out. Like, they believe if you cannot be educated, that's the only solution to have a better future and have hope. So I came with that projection. I came with that, like, hey, my kids, I want you to have good grades. I want you to, go to college. But I realized that, wait a minute, but that was my expectation. That's what I did. That's what was required of me, coming from a world where they value education so much, that somehow I was projecting to my kids, that I realized, like, wait a minute, my teens don't necessarily they want to go to college, but they want to be good men. They want to work hard, no matter what job they have, that they can do the best they can. And that truly helped me to meet them where they're at. When we meet our kids where they're at, we're able to guide them and walk with them and lead them to where they need to be. Rather than we parents coming in saying, I want them to be this way, I want them to get here. No, it is a child that will guide me and will lead me to where they want to go, but I have to meet them where they're at.
I think that's maybe just a good general parenting principle.
Yeah.
Whether they're adoptive or foster kids or not. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So how can I, as a parent, know or become aware of when we're reacting to kids through expectations versus the reality?
Well, you've got to check yourself. Like, for me, I really had to realign myself and say, I'm wanting my kids to be here, but is that mine or is that my children? That I had to reevaluate my own self. And that really helped me. And I think for us as parents, sometimes because we are the parents guiding our kids, but we never go back to think about, wait, I get to do this and I want my kids to do this, but why? And the more we can ask the why on ourselves, the more we can really understand that, wait a minute, that is how I grew up. That's how I was raised. So in some way, I'm doing exactly the same of how I was raised. To the kids, sometimes that doesn't fit in that box, And that for me has truly helped me evaluating myself as a parent, In that way, I get to know, wait a minute, my child actually needs this, how can I focus on this? But also too, we have kids with trauma. And I think sometimes it's easy to look at a big picture and we miss out the little things, For example, the small wins really help us see how our kids are growing. When we focus on the big, we miss out. And for me, that has helped me that small wins will help me and my parenting skills to guide my child and to be there for them. Remember, meeting them where they're at.
I love that. And speaking of, missing things, obviously when you're a foster parent, an adoptive parent, you can guess that there could be some challenging behaviors coming into the home, maybe missing some of the root causes. And I'm sure as many children that have come through your home, you've probably had a situation where you had to really look at it and examine the root cause and figure out what was going on.
Right, absolutely. 99.9 of our children in foster care come with trauma, and sometimes they will show us their trauma in a whole different way. So I'll give you an example. One of the examples I used, I got a 5-year-old come to my home and he went to use the bathroom and he picked up his number 2 and smeared in the entire bathroom. Exactly. And I was like, oh gosh, I can't do this, because I was thinking about my house, the smell, the cost. Also, I don't think I'm trained enough to be a dad to this kid. But that's where I was going. But that was me going in that place. But then once I stepped back and I said, wait a minute, but why is this kid doing so? Come to find, he was sexually abused as a kid. So he was protecting himself. He said, if I can make myself dirty, I will not be touched by this man. I mean, think about at 5 that you have that brain to think about how to protect yourself. Man, so for me, the reaction was the opposite. Empathy, and also wanting to make sure that I can help this child know that I'm not going to do that to him. So learning the root cause helped me be the best parent I can be to him, because I wasn't focusing on what he did. I was focusing on the why. Why did he do what he did? And that brought me more empathy, love, and wanting to truly go beyond what I wanted to do in order to protect him and love on him and show him that you're okay and it's going to be okay.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Man, you're a little bit of a unicorn in a way, because, you've been a foster parent, you've adopted children, but yet you've been an abandoned child as well. So talk about how, becoming the adoptive parent, how that dual perspective has helped you.
Right, absolutely. My past maybe has been the most instrumental in my learning how to parent, because I always have to revisit my own childhood, And I embrace my childhood in a way to really show me how can I be there for others, And I think that's where maybe I'm a regular parent, because I understand my kids more than most people do, If my child steals, that was my professional job to steal, but I knew why. And so for me, I approached it in a different way because I knew why I did that. Trust. Sometimes it's not easy to trust anyone at all. I could never trust one soul, because everyone who was kind was abusive at the same time. So why should my child come to my home? They've never met me, they've never seen me, and somehow they're living with me. Like, why should they trust me, And knowing in that position what I felt like, that I get to really also approach to my children and say, how can I create an environment where it's not my job to heal their trauma, but my job is to create space for them to heal their trauma at their own time, the best way they can. So yes, my past has really helped me, but also it's helped me be there for my kids as well. Before I became a foster parent, I had to really, really revisit my own childhood and make sure that I didn't bring it over to my parenting style, And that really helped me to see it as a tool rather than a negative. And in that way, it's helped me to truly see where my kids come from, to see where their parents are, to see the trauma they go through, and to be honest to say, if there was hope for me and I could make it, they can make it as well.
I love that. The trauma that you're talking about, sometimes these children have a very difficult time accepting love of any kind, affection, like being able to form connections or attachments with anyone. How do you break through in those situations?
Well, again, with the children, so think of it this way, that for us who operate in the normal world, to them, normal is abnormal. So think of this way, you being kind, you touching them, you letting hold them, like that's normal. But for them, it is
weird.
abnormal.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you're two different people. So you're trying to make what is abnormal for them normal, and that's how you have to look at it. Say, hey, to me it's okay to be hugged, to me it's okay to be touched, but my child is not the same way. So then the approach of how you want them to understand the other way is key. That you get to start small, really small, again, as I said, that you get to the small little things they get to do. For me, example, they would sit on the opposite chair, but with time they get to sit on the same seat. So for me, I see that as a progress. Did it take a week? No. Did it take 6 months? Probably more than that, but in a way to really watch what is working for my child and being able to say, okay, I'll keep doing this. And for us as foster parents, what we get to do and help our children, you have to do it over and over and over and over again, because their little brain takes a while to really detox or de-think the way they've always thought, to say, hey, this is normal. When this man took me in, when I went to visit them the first time, they were sitting at the table and eating. To me, I thought it was the most weirdest thing to do, because I saw my father beat us every time we were so close. So I was waiting for him to beat up his family, But as more I got to see it, I was like, wait a minute, it is normal, And that is how I began to say, if that's normal, that is what I want. And so I began to heal and learn, because now I had an example of what normal is. The same as our children. Sometimes they have to learn normal along the way, so you have to be patient, but you have to also come alongside them and understand ways on how you can help them along the way. Patience, persistence, and consistency also helps our kids learn abnormal to normal.
I love that somebody that your family was able to help you heal, and you've been able to help so many kids dealing with trauma. But I think about the children who are not going to get that sort of care. They're going to enter into adulthood with a lot of unresolved trauma, and then they're going to become parents. What advice would you offer to a parent who is dealing with some of that unresolved trauma from their childhood?
Well, absolutely. I'll give you statistics. Almost 60 or 70% of our kids who are in foster care, their parents were also in foster care or had the same trauma. So you can see the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. And for any parents that is listening, I would say, take time to heal yourself. Take time to really cut off those ties of the behaviors and the things that you learned from your childhood in order to be there for your children. It begins with you as an adult. It began with me. I knew that I had to change. I knew that I had to grow. And I knew in order for me to break the cycle, I truly had to revisit even the hardest thing in my childhood that I had to visit. I did therapy. I did learn about, trauma. Most time, even if it was for my children, I felt like it was for me, and that helped me to recover and learn. And I think every parent, that you're doing a disservice to your child, because you're going to bring your past, how you respond, the words you use, the way you answer. Sometimes we get to bring our childhood life of how we're parented to our new kids. And in order to break that, it begins with us, for us to say, I do not want to repeat what my mom or whoever parented me did, and I want to be a different parent. So it begins, remember, we are the adults, so we are the one who have to really take those steps to truly say, I do not want what I had as a child to my child right now.
What do you think is the most systemic problem or issue with the foster care system as it is?
Oh, gosh. Again, going back to so I'll use myself as an example. My father was abusive, and I think he came also from the same abusive family. Had I not broken the cycle, I would still do the same, because I felt every man beats up his family, every man can be mean. But until someone broke that, The same with us. Yes, the system can be rotten, but if we don't change the perspective on human beings, then those kids are gonna keep coming and keep coming. And I would say, as I said, 70% of our kids in foster care come from families who were also in foster care. So in other words, the cycle repeats and repeats. And I feel like the best way we can is really tackle before our children come into foster care. How do we help moms? How do we help those who are struggling? Or how do we help those who really walked into it to be better parents, to break the cycle of repeating what their parents did, 70% of our children who are girls get pregnant by their birthday of 19, So that means that literally before they begin even to be really adults and learn what the real world is, they're already parents. So is there someone to teach them? No, they're gonna repeat the same. So if we can focus on preventing and helping people, I think that would really reduce the number of children who come into foster care.
That's an amazing percentage. 70% of children that are in foster care, their parents were in foster care, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's huge. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't. So, how can communities do a better job of supporting foster and adoptive parents?
Well, there are many ways, many things we can do. Remember, for me, I became a foster parent as a single dad. By the third month, I wanted to quit because I was like, this thing is hard, But I had friends who came alongside and said, Peter, we will help you. We will help you be and do whatever you want to do. And that's how far I've gone because of the kindness of those people. What I'm trying to say is not everyone can be a foster parent. It's a calling. Not everyone can be.
Yeah.
But we can all do something along the way. Do you make good cookies? Can you bring extra cookies to someone who's a foster parent? Man, you're good at doing yard work. Well, what if you did yard work once a month or twice a month for a single mom who's a foster parent? Are you changing it? No, just doing the yard work. So by us doing little things, I think we can truly help our kids and help those who are doing it. I have teenagers. What do they like to do? Video games. But if you love playing video games and taking my teenagers for 2 hours, well, you've helped me get a little break. But 2, you're an important, positive mentor in their lives, by just playing video games, something they love. That along the way, we get to really change the lives of our children. The other part is, it is our responsibility. It's not someone else's. It is our community. I'm African. I believe it takes a village to raise a child. It takes you and I to do whatever we can do. Is it supporting, being a volunteer? Is it giving money to charity? That we can do something that along the way, we get to change our community. But it takes you and I to do something. And there's nothing small.
Let's talk about it. You have worked for Compassion International, and we're about to have next week. Of course, the podcast will be airing at a different time or be available at a different time. But it's always going to be there on our website. You can always go to myflr.org and sponsor a child right there. Can you talk about child sponsorship and why you got involved with Compassion and why you would encourage someone to do that, to sponsor children?
Well, I was that kid who was sponsored. The man who rescued me off the street works for Compassion International. So he became
okay.
He became my sponsor. He became my sponsor in a way. He's like, you're already old, but I'm going to be your sponsor. And that's how he really changed my life. Yes, sponsorship changes lives. It's giving an opportunity to a mom on the other side, to a dad on the other side to say, we know you lack resource, but we want to come alongside as you to give you an opportunity for your child to go to school, have health insurance, and know Christ as the Lord and Savior. And that is really what you're doing. And you're being a missionary from your home. And literally, you get to be at home and you get to pay a little every month. And that child gets to have absolutely an opportunity that they would never have had before. As I said, I had my first pair of shoes at 16. I slept on a mattress at 16. Went to school at 16. Never picked up a meal, anything until later in life. Why? Because someone wanted to change my life. A stranger who did not know me. And so the same as we can do here in the United States by truly saying, hey, what can I do to change the life of another child somewhere?
Well, Misty's been on a compassion trip. I just came back from Tanzania a couple of months ago, and that's kind of the country that we're going to be focusing on. And I could not believe for just $43 a month all the good that did and how it literally not just changes the child, but their family and the community that they're in. I saw a statistic. I was like 8 to 10 people hear about Jesus just because you sponsored this child. I'm like, wow, if you believe in the cause of Christ, I can't think of any other. This is perfect. Go for it. I mean, it literally blew my mind how much that changes things.
Right, absolutely. Letters, you get to write to them, but when you write, who reads the letter? Everyone in the family, Sometimes it's your only picture in their family. They get to see, like, who's that? Well, that's the man that loves me. But also they get to know that you love Christ, the Lord and Savior, and that changes, But also, too, that your child is in a local church, and that really expands the family to participate, to see the pastors show up, and that really changes the child's life and those around the child's life as well.
That's awesome.
So real quick, I wanted to ask, because my husband and I really, we feel like at some point, we're being called to foster, and I don't know exactly when that's going to be. What advice would you give to somebody who feels that calling? Like, how can you prepare to become a foster parent?
Absolutely. It's really hard to prepare. But here's what I would say. You begin small. As I said, you don't have to be a foster parent right away. But would you get to know someone who's a foster parent already? Visit them.
Oh, that's
find someone like show them, bring them a meal once in a while, And the more we say the proximity really helps you to learn a little bit more, And that would help you to see how they parent, the struggles that they have, and that will give you a little glimpse of, hey, I'm gonna go home. Here's things I'm gonna prepare myself for. We get children. I get to get a phone call and they give me 20 minutes to decide yes or no. In 20 minutes, So most of there's no room to prepare. Exactly. Here's what? Because there's 5 foster families, but there's 100 kids that they're looking for a place to stay. So they have no time to say, well, take about a week. No, it's like, it's now, 30 minutes, because they are calling every other family. Do you have space? So that's how long it takes. So usually I don't know what my child looks like or even who they are until they walk into the family door, like, hey, how are you?
What kind of information do they give you?
Well, nothing really. They tell you a boy or a girl and how old they are. That's pretty much.
Okay. Wow. That's it.
Man.
That's it.
No background. It's wow.
Woo. All right. Wow.
Well, I guess you got to be like, Holy Spirit, give me the word right now.
Right. Holy Spirit, activate.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like we're prepared in one area because my husband loves to play video games. So we're good there.
There you go. You can take a teenager and right away they fall in love.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, all you need is really a caring heart and willing to say, I'm going to love this child and I'm going to know who he is. And that's all it takes. About preparing, I would say you get to know them as you prepare for them. So for me, I don't buy them clothes until they arrive. Then we go together and say, what would you like? What's your favorite character? I buy things they like, and that's how I get to learn about my children in a way.
I love that.
That's wise. I like that. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. This has been really good. Our guest has been Peter Mutabazi, passionate speaker and author of Now I Am Known, and his latest book, Love Does Not Conquer All. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been really interesting.
And thank you for what you're doing for these kids and their families. That's
47?
amazing. That is.
Wow. You're impressive.
Yeah. I want to be you when I grow up.
Well, to whom much is given, much is required. I've been given so much that I wanted to give much as I've been given.
I love that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Peter. Really appreciate your time. This has really been good to talk about and learn. And, I think I learned a little about parenting myself here. So that's great. Appreciate your time. Yeah, God bless.
Thank you as well.